Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff this week on the show. One real big piece of news for us, and that is the PS5 showcase event where we saw a surprising amount of big stuff. It was, I think, a much bigger event than we were predicting. And finally, the price and release date of the system, and then the absolute clusterfuck nightmare pre-order scenario that followed. So we will talk about all of that.
Yes. It was a fun day because it aired in my time zone at 2 o'clock, which is right at the end of the day. And with our new schedule at the school, basically the first half of the day is classes and the second half of the day is planning time. So maybe some stuff didn't get graded that would have gotten graded because I just was in my classroom and just watched it there because I'm like, yeah, screw it. I just want to watch this thing.
Yep. I think that's good. I think that's fine. You've been working hard. So we're going to talk about all of that. I think that's going to be the main thing this week. I have a couple little stuff things. I want to start, though. I would feel remiss in not acknowledging the national crisis we're in. The seventh layer of the seven-layer dip that is American national crises in 2020, which is the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is, I don't know, Sean. I saw the news, and I don't know if I've ever felt more viscerally sick hearing a piece of news since, maybe Trump was elected.
No, I mean, that was the exact thought that I had. That's like, oh, yeah, I have not had this kind of, gut, kind of feeling about, something happening in the news since 2016. So.
And it's a couple of things. I mean, one... It is, and this sucks in so many omnidirectional ways. And one of them is that we should be able to have time to celebrate the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she was she's one of those people we were lucky to live in the same time as, This is like John Lewis, who passed away a couple months ago. And because, the fate of the Republic did not rest on the shoulders of John Lewis, we got to, I think, properly discuss and memorialize his incredible life. But we haven't been able to do that for Ruth Bader Ginsburg because, the fate of the Republic kind of did rest on her small 87-year-old shoulders. And she's gone, and that sucks. And it is scary in so many omnidirectional ways. It's also clearly, just in the 48 hours since it happened, been incredibly activating to the Democratic cause, and that is good. I don't think anyone's rolling over and, declaring themselves dead because of this, and that is a good and inspiring thing. But, man, Sean, I don't know. Like I said, I literally, breath caught in my throat. Oh my God, this is the nightmare scenario.
Yeah, and it's as you said, it is this frustrating thing that you want to be able to spend time, as you said, memorializing Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she was such an incredible Supreme Court justice for our whole lifetime, basically. But then the immediate feeling is the political crisis that then follows with her passing of what now happens, right? With the Supreme Court and President Trump and fucking Mitch fucking go fuck himself McConnell in the Senate. And it is truly terrifying thinking about the potential consequences of what could happen in the next month or two with the fallout of this.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very bad. And it was already very, very bad. We've already had an entrenched 5-4 conservative majority on the Supreme Court for basically our entire lives. But it's been more flexible. Kennedy was very much a swing justice. We've had a couple years without him. It's not been as bad as it could be because clearly Roberts is thinking about legacy and things, but he will have much less power to do that in a world of a 6-3 if we don't do something about it. So, it's not a done deal. The fight is very much not over. There are lots of things that can be done and should be done. And if you were not already motivated to A, vote, and B, help other people vote, then I really hope you are now. Whatever individually we can do to get Joe Biden in office, I don't care if you like him or not, he's better than the alternative, That's step one. Step one. And get a Democratic Senate and do what we can, because there are things that can be done. So it is terrifying. If you are someone who lives outside the U.S., and I know we have lots of people who live outside the U.S. listening, I would also recommend, if you're wondering like why, you probably have a better understanding of why our political crisis is so big with her passing. But if you don't know about her life as much, and I think this applies to some people in the U.S. too, there's a great documentary, it's on Hulu right now, called RBG, that's just a good basic overview of her life, and I'd recommend people see it, because one of the interesting things about her is her work off the Supreme Court, like before she got there in 1993, is arguably of even more historical import than what she did on the Supreme Court. And really the only other person you can say that about is maybe Thurgood Marshall, for all the civil rights work they did beforehand. She was an incredible lawyer, fighting for women's civil rights, basically her entire life, from a young age to 87 years old. So, I would look that up. I do, Sean, I promised this over the weekend, and I'm going to do this. Every week from now until the election, I am going to be highlighting at least one cause that I think listeners should give some money to, because the simplest thing you can do, if you can, is just throw money at the problem. If you can throw time and effort and volunteer work at the problem, that's great. I understand not all of us can do one or the other. Hopefully we can do both. So right now, I'm going to recommend, as you just said, Sean, Mitch McConnell is, I think, literally maybe just Satan incarnate. Like, I think we had it wrong, the, goat legs and the horns. No, it's an old turtle-looking motherfucker from Kentucky. That's what Satan looks like. We have to get him out of power. The easiest way to get him out of power is to take power back in the Senate. So I'm going to recommend, this fund has been getting a lot of money this weekend, but it's because it's good and it's easy. And it is the Get Mitch or Die Trying Fund on Act Blue, which basically just takes your donation and splits it among our most hopeful Senate prospects. Not just ones that we're probably going to win, like Colorado and Arizona. I think they've actually taken those off the board, because we're going to win those ones. And there's ones that we very much could win, like Sarah Gideon in Maine, that have plenty of money. So this gives them the money to candidates who really need it. For instance, I live in Iowa. Teresa Greenfield is my Senate candidate running against Joni Ernst, who is terrible and has already said she wants to fill the Supreme Court seat. And she just came out in a poll yesterday, 3 points up. She can absolutely win it, but there's been very, very little attention. So that's one where your dollars will go a really long way, and you can select who gets the money and who doesn't. Very easy to find. It's votesaveamerica.com/getmitch. And I will just say, we do not charge for this podcast. We have never charged for this podcast. We probably never will. But if you feel like you would like to pay your way to listen to our content, just give $10 to that, and I will call that fine. I've done it. Sean, I know you've probably been active in different things. Yeah. Just easy little thing you can go do, and it really does go a long way, because there's a month left, and we not only can we take the Senate, I think with this, if we play our cards right, we could take a bigger majority than we thought. There's a lot on the table. There are a lot of races in play. This can happen. And I don't think this should be a moment to lose hope. It should be a moment to fight harder.
Yeah, because now is the moment to fight the hardest, right? Now is the moment to, if we can, try to stymie and stop any further damage from happening, which is possible, right? It's not like it is a foregone conclusion.
Yes. So we're going to be political on this podcast for the next couple of weeks. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. The world is very political right now. It's not us, it's the world. It's important, right? And frankly, maybe we should have been doing this earlier, but it's a small thing that hopefully we can do, hopefully you can do. Go throw some money at the problem. Go throw some time if you can. I'm doing some volunteering with some letter writing campaigns, texting, calling, just whatever you can do. This is it. The simplest way I can put this, if you're an American, it's not really a vote between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's a vote, do you want to still have a democracy, or do you want to not have a democracy anymore? And that's kind of it. That's the simplest form of this thing.
Yeah, no, 100%.
All right. You want to move on, Sean?
Yeah, what else have we got going on, Jonathan?
Well, moving on to much more frivolous matters in terms of stuff. My only big stuff this week is I got Super Mario 3D All Stars, so I thought I should talk about that a little bit.
Yes, because I was curious about some stuff with this game, so I'm glad that you've picked it up and have checked it out.
Yes, go ahead and ask me some questions if you have them. I've played a little bit of all three games. I've played the least of Mario 64 because I know that game like the back of my hand. I've played a little bit of Galaxy to test that out. I also know that game very well. But I've spent most of my time in Mario Sunshine because that is the game I have played the least of in my life and I would like to finally beat. But overall, I like the collection. I think we've already litigated a lot of like what is not there. It should have Mario Galaxy 2. It probably should have done some more basic things in terms of like Mario 64 being in widescreen, the games all being in 60 FPS, let alone having full remakes of these games would be interesting as well. But I will say for what is there, I am impressed. The games look remarkably good, especially like the one that kind of blew me away the most in a very simple way is Mario 64, just because I know that game so well. It looks really, really nice. It's only in 720p, but even blowing it up on my 4K screen, it looks fantastic. It's very bright, very colorful. Past ports of that game on Virtual Console have been very dim, so that alone is kind of night and day. They've replaced a lot of kind of basic textures, like Mario's entire outfit. It looks the same, just much higher quality textures. They've replaced all the text in the game, because the text, this is true of a lot of 64 games, was just very fuzzy and hard to read, especially when you were up-resing it to higher and higher resolutions. So they've redone all of that. They've redrawn all the UI elements, and those look just gorgeous. So altogether, it's just like, it's an extremely clean, pristine-looking version of this great game with its original art assets and everything. And really the only thing I could ask of that version is I do think getting it in widescreen would have been awesome. But for what it is, it's great. So I like that. Mario Sunshine looks absolutely gorgeous. I've spent a lot of time with it. That is such a... Whatever else you think about Sunshine, it's a controversial Mario game. It's a really nice looking Mario game. It's got a really cool aesthetic. It's got a cool atmosphere. And it looks really, really nice. It's in full 1080p. It's in widescreen. It's very colorful. I'm surprised. Like, that game looks very modern in a lot of ways. Although they have not... It still has that kind of GameCube look. I don't know how exactly to describe it, but you know how, Sean, like GameCube games all were kind of like shiny in a weird way on all their like textures? It's still it's got that nostalgic GameCube era look to me. The only thing is the pre-rendered cutscenes, they kind of did what they could with them, short of remaking them. But they don't look great. They look a little dim and fuzzy. But these were pre-rendered videos made in 2002. There's only so much you can do. Maybe they should have just reanimated them. They didn't. Mario Galaxy is in many ways the most impressive. Mario Galaxy was already one of the most just kind of graphically stunning Nintendo games ever made. Same with Mario Galaxy 2. It's been up-resed to... Not up-resed, it's been... re-rendered in 1080p, some of the same like little texture enhancements and stuff, but it's just like, honestly, Mario Galaxy, they could pass that off as a new game in 2020, and I don't know what game from 2007 you could say that about, but that game was always just so good looking. It's a rock solid 60 FPS. It looks great. I found it very interesting what they've done with the controls for Mario Galaxy, because that was a Wii game, in that it used the motion controls a lot. And basically, the Wii controls have survived intact because the Joy-Con can roughly replicate them. So you use your right Joy-Con because it's got the gyrometer in it, and you can do all the pointer controls and stuff. It's obviously a little less accurate than if you had the full IR sensor that the Wii used. And the other thing that is unfortunate is that it will tend to drift over time because there is no pointer it's pointing at. It's all based on the gyrometer inside of it. But there's a dedicated button. You just use R, the right bumper, and it'll recenter on the screen at any time. So that's as good of a solution as I think you could do for that, and it allows you to still do all the pointer controls and everything. You can still shake your controller to do Mario's little spin, but you can also hit Y. That's especially nice in handheld mode. In handheld mode, you just use touchscreen controls in place of the motion controls. I think it's about as good a solution as I could imagine without heavily reworking the game. And as someone who has played that game and its sequel several times and has a lot of muscle memory with it, when I'm just sitting on the couch with the two Joy-Con playing it, I am glad the Wii controls sort of survived, because the muscle memory of shaking the controller in certain moments is too strong to like go away. But I'm glad they've replaced, that with Y as well if you want to use that. So overall, these are two phenomenal games and one really interesting, ambitious game that didn't quite come together. And I'll talk about that more in a minute, because I've been playing a lot of Sunshine and I have new thoughts on it. But yeah, I like it. I think if you like these games, you'll know if it's worth it to you or not. I certainly like having them on my Switch an awful lot, even if it could have been more as a collection. But Sean, what questions did you have?
Yeah, I just guess I have a couple of like nitty gritty questions that I'm sure probably are answered out there somewhere, but I have not gone like looking in depth on these since they got released. So with Mario 64, have you noticed, have they increased the draw distance at all? Because Mario 64 has this weird problem. It's true of many N64 games where you didn't have a lot of resources for 3D, so the draw distance was really poor, and they would draw objective critical objects earlier than anything else. So, or they draw them further out into the distance. So it would be like if you're flying through the coins on the first level, you can see the coin in the middle of the coin circle that like you can get all of them to get one of the stars. And the ones that's in the middle that you have to hit to get the stars renders out from further away than the rest of the coins. And it's one of the things that is like, I remember the last time I played through that game a couple of years ago, I emulated it on my PC. And obviously that wouldn't fix that problem. And I found it incredibly disorienting that like have different things draw at different distances. And it's like really confusing if you're used to modern video games. Is that fixed in any way?
No. So I have not played enough of it to fully see that firsthand, but I don't believe so. Because like the mission I always think about that you see that on is the one in basically the red coins mission on Bob-omb Battlefield, where you have to fly through the sky and go through like the coins and the rings. I guess that's not the red coin mission, but the cap mission. And the coins you need to see do not draw in until you're right up on them. But I haven't gotten that far yet. But I did like looking at the Digital Foundry breakdown of this game. The basic thing to know is that all three of these games are running on emulation. They are not ports, they're emulated. So like the game basically like the game file has a built-in like emulator for all of these. It's for Galaxy it's a little weird because actually it is running natively on the Switch's CPU, and then there are some elements of GPU that are being emulated. So it's like a half emulation, but Sunshine is fully emulated and 64 is fully emulated, and all the like visual enhancements are things where like, so the new textures and stuff, they've basically put in code into the game of like when the 64 code is supposed to grab this texture, this old texture, it tells it to go grab this new texture. That's what they've done. So they have not gone in and like remade any of these things. So things like draw distance should still be there. In fact, one of the weirder things Digital Foundry noticed is that if Mario gets far enough in the distance, in the original 64 code, they replace him with a low poly Mario figure. And that's a pretty common thing you would do in older games, even newer games sometimes. That's one of the things that actually having SSDs on the new consoles will eliminate the need to do. But like it wasn't very noticeable in 240p original Mario 64. It's apparently, and I haven't seen it myself yet, but it's apparently very noticeable in the like nice HD version, because you get from the like really nice newish Mario model that's been cleaned up to old ass low poly Mario. So no, they have not fixed that, Sean.
Okay, so then, and I assume like no modifications to the camera or anything like that for Mario 64, right?
No, I mean these are the original ass games. There are some things that are inherently easier, just like in HD it looks cleaner or something, but like no, none of the control things have really changed.
Yeah, because for Mario 64, those are the two things that like, you know, if you don't want to do a full remaster, those would be the two technical things, the camera, particularly the camera if you don't have C buttons. I imagine that like, because I remember, again, when I emulated on my PC and I used like a 360 controller or whatever, the C button thing doesn't like make sense on a right stick. It just feels weird. And that's like true of any of those Nintendo 64 games if you play them on a modern controller. So those have been the two things that I would have liked for Mario 64. Then Sunshine. So in Super Mario Sunshine, that game originally had what we would now call inverted y-axis. At the time, it was default, and all you people went crazy. I don't know, and everyone just decided it was the other way around. Not entirely sure why that happened, but I've kept the faith all these years. So it was, if you pushed forward on the stick, you'd look down. If you pushed back on the stick, it would go up, right? Normal camera controls that now we call inverted. What is it like now?
They are uninverted. They are.
Can you change it?
No.
Okay, that was my worry. That was my worry that because if the menu never existed to change the control, that seemed like that would be the thing that they wouldn't go in and do the work to put in the menu. So
yes.
Great.
No, there is no control mapping anywhere in this collection, which is one of the weirder things about it. But yes, no, it is uninverted now. The other big thing with Sunshine they've had to adapt is Sunshine was very reliant on the GameCube's big-ass triggers.
Yeah, this is going to be my other question.
Yeah, go ahead and explain.
Well, yeah. So the GameCube had not only analog triggers, but they had two-step triggers. So it's like if there was like a clear half-press state on the R and L buttons on the GameCube, and then a full-press state. And Sunshine used that for like your nozzle, basically, for the flood. How is that replicated on the Switch when the Switch doesn't have analog triggers?
Right. So, and they would have had to do something about this even if they were doing it on like a PS4 controller because of the lack of the two-step thing, right?
Yeah.
Because basically how Sunshine did it is you have the running around shooting your water, which was the half-step state, and then you have, if you pulled it down all the way, Mario would stop, and then you would be able to aim and shoot. What they've done is they've just split those across two buttons. So if you are pulling the right trigger, ZR, that is the run and shoot button, and if you stop and you or if you press the right bumper, so R, that is the Mario stops and you're just aiming and shooting, and then you can go into first person mode as well in that. I think that's about as good a solution. Honestly, like in some ways, I find that better because just in my mind it's just a little easier to remember two buttons and they're right next to each other. But the one thing you are missing is I think you could like adjust the water level based on how much you pulled the trigger, and that's not really in there anymore. It's just a full water squirt. I don't think that there was nothing that really like that was more of just a fun thing you could do in the game. There was nothing that required that or really benefited from that in Mario Sunshine. So it's not like you're necessarily losing anything. It would obviously, the game is in its definitive state has those because that's has the triggers because that's what it was made for. But in my experience, I mean, I've gotten like 35 of the shines. I'm well into the game, and it has not made it harder having it this way. It seems like as good an adaptation to the Switch controller as you could do. I'm not sure what else they could have done with it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I was just curious, like. It's that weird thing about Nintendo games in particular, of like Nintendo games of the more modern period from N64 forward, when you try to do backwards compatibility, is they have such weird fucking controller shit on every single controller along the way, like with Galaxy and motion controls. And so it's always that thing when they have to do it and do a collection like this. It's interesting to think about all the little tiny things they need to accommodate for that you can kind of map, but is never going to be quite perfect.
Like, honestly, 64, its controls survive the most intact because the N64 controller, awful as it was, is the closest to a modern controller in some ways because it was the most similar because it wasn't like the GameCube with its special triggers or button placement. It wasn't like the Wiimote with motion controls and stuff. It wasn't the gamepad. It was just a gamepad, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. So how then is Super Mario Sunshine treating you?
I like it more than I've ever liked it before because I've really forced myself to engage with it. There is a lot of... Like, Mario Sunshine is not a bad game, I don't think. It is not... I don't think so. I don't think it is... I like it. I don't love it. I think it does depend a little bit. Like, if you are not a platformer person inherently, there are Mario games that I think you would still enjoy. Like Mario 64, like Galaxy... I don't think Sunshine is one of those. If you do not have the just normal like tolerance that I have for some platforming bullshit, Sunshine would drive you absolutely up the fucking wall, and I'm imagining that's kind of your reaction to it, Sean.
Yeah, I guess for me, Sunshine is a combination of a couple of things. Of like, yeah, it is the like it moves a little bit further away from the exploration focus that I liked in 64, and it has a little bit more of here's like, I mean, that's why Flood exists, right? Is because they want you to do some more challenging platforming stuff, and they couldn't figure out how to do it well. So they're like, here's like a bullshit jetpack thing, so that way you can like hover to try to help you hit those jumps. For me, the big problem with Super Mario Sunshine, and I remember this from playing the game, and then I watched Giant Bomb did a feature where they played through the whole game, and watching them play it like brought back all these memories of like when I rented that game and was so disappointed by it. And for me, it was like the objectives are so boring and repetitive. Like every single area has like 3 or 4 red coin challenges in it. If you count like you do like the weird like platforming areas without Flood, and then they go and put red coins in there. There are like 2 red coins in most areas. They're like, here's 8 red coins in this half of the map, and here's 8 red coins in this other half of the map. And then there's a just whole series of bullshit gimmicky objectives that are incredibly infuriating and poorly designed, that anybody who plays Super Mario Sunshine just basically says, oh yeah, just skip like 25 to 30% of the shines at some point because they are awful. And you have to, and it's like, that's the kind of game it is to me, is like you have to kind of accommodate for all the boring filler kind of repetitive objective stuff and try to find like the handful of nuggets of really fun areas and objectives the game does have.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. My biggest problem with Sunshine is and has always been the controls. I think it controls really poorly. And that's, honestly, when you have it in a collection right next to Mario 64 and Galaxy, it is especially noticeable. And part of this is that I actually think it would have been easier to get into Sunshine back in the day than it is now, because Mario just controls very differently in Sunshine than he does in other Mario games. And at the time, there was only one other 3D Mario game, Mario 64. But now we have a bunch of Mario 3D games, and the Mario of 64, Galaxy, Galaxy 2, 3D Land, 3D World, and Odyssey controls roughly the same. Like, there are some additional things you get, there's some additional gimmicks, you have the spin move in Galaxy, things like that. But, like, the way the triple jump times, the way wall jumps work, the long jump, the like crouch jump, all of that kind of stuff is just in all those games. And so if you've played a lot of Mario, that's your muscle memory. And Mario in Sunshine is slower. He has fewer jumps. There's no long jump. That will never not confuse me in that game, because there are moments where I'm just, my instinct is to do it, and then I'm like, the L button does nothing. What am I doing? And I'll mess up and that sort of thing. And he just, there's like, so for instance, those special challenges, the parts where they take Flood off of you to just do the platforming challenges, and it plays the absolute bop music of the do 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 boom 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 ba ba dum. Yeah, that one is great. But like those challenge areas, on just a level of like level geography, level design, basic Mario platforming design, I don't think they're that hard. I have played Galaxy 1 and 2 to completion multiple times, and I think they have much harder, like, challengey kind of things like that. The difference is Galaxy controls like a fucking dream, and so you just feel much more in control, and Sunshine controls like utter shit. And most of my deaths in those kind of areas in Sunshine is trying to negotiate the terrible controls. And it's just stuff like it's down to the level of, I don't think Mario's analog movement quite feels right. Like, it feels more rigid, almost like it's an 8-axis thing, like with a D-pad, than it is a full 360 movement thing. And just, like, landing on small platforms and things like that is way harder than it should be, and even harder for me than stuff like 64. And 64 is a little slippery by today's standards, but, like, I think, especially compared to most platformers or 3D games from that era, Mario 64 controls astonishingly well to this day. And your big impediments are going to be things like the camera. But Sunshine just controls poorly, and there's just things that are hard. I do actually enjoy, now that I'm engaging with it, all the Flood stuff, because that is where the game's heart like really is. That's what it's built around. And I think, because you have a more limited move set, and then you have to figure out how to use your water moves in your jetpack, there are some interesting things they do. Like, because of that jetpack, like, if you combine the jetpack with the only real special jump Mario has in this game is the flick the control stick and jump, and then he does the big somersault jump. Combining that with the jetpack, you can get to some really far off places and do a lot of cool tricks and stuff, and those are the most I enjoy the basic controls, and there's some challenges that deal with that well. You know, the levels are generally there's fewer levels and they're much bigger than in 64. And I do think there's just some fun basic exploration. There's also some maddening exploration where I think it is bad at informing you where you are supposed to go and what you are supposed to do. And then there's also, as you say, Sean, there is some just basic repetitive stuff. I cannot count how many fucking piranha plants covered in goop you have to fight in the first, hour and a half of this game. It goes away eventually, and you do much less of that, but it is front-loaded with a bunch of piranha plants covered in goop that you have to shoot and water into their mouth until they get fat, and then you ground pound them. And it's just stuff like that that is very repetitive. You're right, there are 2 main red coin challenges in every level. There do not need to be 2 red coin challenges in every level. Some levels are kind of better than others. Some have just the most maddening objectives and things where, again, just the basic controls make it so much harder than it needs to be. I think it's very up and down. I will say for me, the fun in it has been, I know every other 3D Mario game very, very well, and this is the one that I've mostly never played. And so I am having fun on that level of, hey, this feels almost like a new Mario game to me once I get deep enough into it and I'm into a lot of stuff I've never done in it before. And so I'm enjoying it on that level. I do think it's got great graphics. I think its world design is cool. I like its aesthetic. I like its, Isle Delfino as a place. I like some of it's very unique in a lot of its enemy design and stuff. It does not have Goombas and Koopas. It has all these aquatic based things, and it's got all the Isle Delfino people. It's fun on that way. It's also got a fucking killer soundtrack. It's just got a great soundtrack. And I think one of the things that's interesting, if you can detach a little from just the am I having fun to the as a game critic, as a game historian trying to understand things, it is interesting as this was a big swing from Nintendo. It was we're not doing just a straight up sequel to Mario 64. It is kind of nominally that, but it does a bunch of different stuff with the formula. And I think that's interesting. And the GameCube was an era of Nintendo taking really big swings with all their major franchises. Wind Waker was a big swing for Zelda that I think paid off for Zelda much more. Metroid Prime was a big swing for Metroid that paid off phenomenally. I think Sunshine is the one where they swung and they maybe hit a double. They certainly didn't hit a home run. Maybe they fucking walked. I don't know. I'm mixing my metaphors at this point. But its ambition is interesting, and I do think a lot of its flaws are flaws of ambition, where I'm just there was a level I was doing last night where I'm what they are asking me to do and what they are trying to pull off here is more complex than I think they could have reasonably done on the GameCube. But it also very clearly lays the groundwork for stuff in Galaxy and beyond, where they would hone this and they would have the better hardware to pull it off. And so I find that interesting. It is a really fascinating stepping stone. And, 3D Mario games have a fascinating history to me because they're all pretty different from one another. And they've all been pretty ambitious in terms of the big swings they take, of Mario 64 borrowing basically nothing from the old Mario 2D games and just making an entirely new game formula out of nothing. Mario Sunshine, all of the swings I've been talking about. Mario Galaxy is out of this... I was going to say out of this world. That's terrible. That's a terrible pun about Mario Galaxy.
But it is... reading some old Mario Galaxy reviews and getting the header on them?
Yeah. No, but but Mario Galaxy is crazy in what it goes out there and tries to do with all the gravity stuff, and it's a very different game than the other Marios. 3D Land and 3D World, then, are this interesting mix of 3D Mario mechanics with old 2D Mario design, and then Odyssey is kind of everything in a blender and also crazy ambitious. And it's kind of amazing to me that they've done all those big swings with 3D Mario, and only one of them has notably misfired in Sunshine. That's a pretty high batting average for a series that is not like a Zelda or something, where it has a basic formula that it hits on every time until Zelda got to Breath of the Wild. It's much more of a chameleon than that, and I think Mario Sunshine is interesting as the one where there were a lot of pieces that I don't think come together. I do think it's a game that I would say is strictly for Mario fans only. I would not say if as I was saying earlier, Sean, you are someone who just enjoys the basics of platforming less than I do. And I think if you're in that boat, Mario Sunshine is that would not be the Mario game I tell you to go play. I would tell you to play all the other ones first. But I think if you are someone who's never really engaged with Sunshine and you want to and you like Mario, this is the way to do it. I will say I do think some things in the game are easier by simple virtue of being in HD and widescreen. It's easier to see where the red coins are hidden. There's one level that I know I would have just thrown my controller through the TV on GameCube where you have to get red coins surfing around this water level. And a couple of the red coins are placed against red ships. And I just know in 480p on GameCube, I would never have found it because it took me about 15 minutes of attempts to find it on this, and it was because, you know, it's in HD and it's in high and it's in HD. The colors are a little brighter and it's a little easier to see the distinctions between them. But like just stuff like that, where I'm like, how did they not catch that? You know, I think it would be interesting if Nintendo one day did a full remake or sequel to Mario Sunshine where they really were able to do it from the ground up and rethink some of these mechanics and iron out some of the problems you talked about with the repetitiveness, because there is I do think there's a really good core to that game. But that's not what they did here. This is the GameCube game and it looks nicer. So, yeah, that's my mini sense on Mario Sunshine.
Well, I look forward to you getting all 100 whatever it is shines in the game, doing your full completion run. I've been looking forward to because you didn't. I mean, one thing you didn't really talk about much, other than that the cutscenes look bad because they didn't do anything new to them, is the wonderful story and voice acting.
It's amazing
in Super Mario Sunshine.
It's such an amazing relic of, like, this is the one time they tried to do voice acting with Mario. It backfired spectacularly because it sounded like a bad dub of a bad 80s cartoon, and then they never did it again. And just Mario stays silent, as he probably should. Voice acting does not mesh with this, really. But they're amazing. I mean, the cutscene that I think everyone knows has been memed the most is Mario in the courtroom. And I do just kind of love that this was only their second big Mario 3D game, and they decide to kick it off by having Mario arrested, thrown in jail, put on trial, and then forced into, like, hard labor. It is very weird, and, like, the judge or the prosecution is, like, in his fucking wig, doing, like, an entire spiel to the jury, and it's, like, it's so wild. But my favorite cutscene so far has by far been the one where you learn that Shadow Mario is Bowser Jr., who I had forgotten this was Bowser Jr.'s first appearance. This is where he comes from. And like that, so that was the unveiling of the fact that Bowser had a kid. And like he comes out and says, "You stole my mama. I'm rescuing my mama. You were going to hurt my mama." And then he's like, "Bowser told me Peach is my mama." And I'm like, well, one, this got really Freudian all of a sudden. And two, I see where the generations of fan theories have now come from of Peach and Bowser are actually in love, and this is just their kink. This is just their kink, is that he kidnaps her and Mario comes and rescues her, but it's role play. Bowser's not actually going to hurt her. Bowser Jr. is totally, that's my headcanon now. Bowser Jr. is totally her actual biological kid. I don't know how that works biologically, but you know, it's magic.
Well, Jonathan, you have now experienced the birth of tens of thousands of DeviantArt accounts from the early 2000s. So now you go back to the Wayback Machine and experience what we were all experiencing back then. All of us who played Super Mario Sunshine is like, what the fuck is going on? What are you talking about? Weird little Bowser.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen that video, I put it on my Twitter account, and you can probably go find the scene on YouTube in 100 different ways. But like, it is a jaw-dropping, like, how did no one understand how this scene came across before launching this game? Because it is wild. It really does feel like the voice direction and everything was done in Japan, like kind of by non-native English speakers, because it's so off and weird, and just like the syntax is so bizarre, you know?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because it only has an English dub. There's no Japanese language version of those cutscenes. They just have Japanese subtitles in the Japanese version.
I forgot about that. Yeah, it's like Metal Wolf Chaos XD or something.
Yes.
Or XD is the new version, but Metal Wolf Chaos, yeah. So, all right, but that's Mario. I'm enjoying the collection. Get to play some of my favorite Mario games, and Sunshine's interesting. So there you go. Mario Sunshine. You want to move on and talk about the news, Sean?
What is going on in the news other than that the world is on fire, Jonathan?
The world is quite literally on fire in a number of different ways, but in the midst of that fire, we at least learned how much the PS5 is going to set us back.
Yes, it finally has happened. We know how much these consoles cost. It's $500 because it was always going to be fucking. It's like, what was the point of all this like weird waiting when like we've been talking about? Oh, these consoles will probably be $500 was a thing we said on this podcast like 8 months ago, and now we're here and they're $500.
They're $500. I do think the lower not spec necessarily, but the lower price models have been surprising. In that,
they're more aggressive than I would have expected.
Yes, that's where the surprise is. But do you want to just go through the show in order? I have my Sean at E3 style notes. I don't know if you did them too.
No, I did not because I did watch it live at my desk. Yeah, so yeah. When you sent me the show notes, Jonathan, and I perused through them, I was very tickled by the fact that they are all written very much in my E3 style notes. Even though this is not E3 2020 because we're outside that window. But I'm happy that you took these kinds of notes.
So let's go through the event and then its aftermath, because the fascinating thing is, Sean, I thought this was by far the best game conference event we've had in 2020, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, easily.
And then afterwards, it was a giant shit show with all this stuff they had to clarify and things they weirdly left out. And then the pre-orders were a fiasco. So, I think it got kind of overshadowed by that. But this was like, if this had been an E3 show, this would have been the bring the house down, we just won E3 show, right?
Yes, yeah, no. It's the thing that we've been wanting this whole time was a show that was focused on games for next generation consoles. Like everything they showed was running in game. Like they had long, there weren't what I would call a gameplay demo, but most games were showed with long gameplay style trailers that showed long stretches of uncut gameplay. Everything they showed, or like almost everything, there was like Fortnite and some filler stuff, but generally speaking, what they showed was incredibly impressive. They had 3 different game trailers that made me actually verbally say in my office or in my office, my classroom at school, oh shit, because it's like, oh my god, this is a hell of a trailer for this really cool looking video game. And yeah, so the whole event was awesome. And then in a very this year Sony-esque fashion, after the show, then was this weird sort of random news bits coming out of different people's Twitter accounts and shit, just kind of okay, so I guess this game is coming out at launch. Oh, this game's coming out on the PS4? Wait, is this coming out on PC? No, it's not coming out on PC. When are pre-orders up? Tomorrow? Oh, they're up right now? Okay. Yes. So it was a tale of two events in a weird way.
Very much so, but let's start with the show itself. The first game we saw, the following content is captured on PC, emulating the PS5 experience, which also this later added to the confusion over whether this is a PC game or not. But what they showed us was, at first it was a little unclear because they said it's Square Enix, it's Creative Business Unit 3, which, in addition to being a great name for a development studio, is also the developer that makes Final Fantasy XIV. So we're wondering, are we seeing the next...
Yeah, I want Creative Business Unit 3 and the Tokyo RPG Factory to tag team a video game.
It's a great name. We're seeing something that was clearly Final Fantasy. It had some kind of character action combat. It was high fantasy. It had a guy transforming into a big phoenix. It had a child getting splattered in blood. It had the tagline, "The legacy of the crystals has shaped our history for long enough." And at this point, I'm like, well, this is awesome, but they're not gonna... It's not Final Fantasy XVI, right? No, it's Final Fantasy XVI.
Oh, yeah.
It's Final Fantasy XVI. They said PlayStation console exclusive. We presumed that meant PC. Later they said it doesn't mean PC. We have no idea, but the point is...
It's gonna mean PC.
I know it's
gonna mean... It absolutely is going to come out on PC. It will probably come to Xbox a year or two later also.
But they announced Final Fantasy XVI out of the blue. It is by the Final Fantasy XIV team. It's Creative Business Unit 3, but moreover, it is produced by Naoki Yoshida. He is the lead on Final Fantasy XIV and is widely considered to be the guy who saved 14 because he took over when they did A Realm Reborn. And he basically rebuilt that game with his team from the ground up, and that is... easily, I think, the most beloved Final Fantasy of the 2000s, other than maybe 10, because 10 is 2000, right? Yeah. but like
Make it the
14
2010s for sure, of the 2010s.
Definitely the 2010s, yeah. But like it's just 14 is just widely acclaimed and beloved, and I've played less of it than I wish I would have. I could still get into it. I probably will at some point. But it is very good, and it's produced by him. It is directed by Hiroshi Takai, who was the assistant director and designer on 14. So this game is very much a Final Fantasy 14 team joint. Which is, I think we can all agree, the best choice Square could make for the franchise right now, which is, hey, who are the people making the best Final Fantasy stuff? Let's take them, let's have them do this. From what we saw in the trailer, it's also, and I think this is cool, it's not an MMO-style game, it looks like. It is,
oh, yeah.
It is from that team, but it looks like they are committing to like full, big character action kind of stuff in a way Final Fantasy has not done before. But I will also say, Sean, more than any non-online Final Fantasy in the 3D era, this looked like old school Final Fantasy to me because it is high fantasy. It's all about the crystals. It's got the monsters and it's got the big environments and the castles, and it's just like this felt like if you went and took one of the original 2D Final Fantasies and made a giant big 3D game in 2020. This is kind of what I would want it to be. And Final Fantasy XIV has a lot of that in it. It very much is in that vein. But man, not only was it cool to get Final Fantasy XVI announced, but to get a Final Fantasy XVI that I am 100% on board with. God damn, this was a cool announcement.
Yeah, it was awesome. It had actually been like lightly rumored a few days before the event, but in such a way that I looked at those rumors as like, this is probably bullshit. It just felt like wishful thinking to me. So then when this started up, and it's hilarious to me how like immediately just by like the eye with like the little hair going over the front of it, you're just like, oh, this is a Final Fantasy game. There's something about like the immediate, you just like, I'm seeing the smallest possible section of this character model, and there's something so identifiable about Square Enix and Final Fantasy that was like, oh, this is a Final Fantasy character. I don't know if this will necessarily be 16. There's definitely a Final Fantasy, and then some guy says like Shiva. You're like, okay, it's a Final Fantasy. But yeah, this is, I am hugely excited about this. It is kind of what especially after 15 was such for me, certainly a disappointment. It was just like, Final Fantasy 15 was such a game that did not live up to the potential it had, for a bunch of different reasons. Probably the most significant one, that it was in development hell forever, with Nomura, and then it had to be saved by Tabata. And so it just kind of felt like that of that kind of Final Fantasy feels like it's more or less run dry. And I think you can tell that it has, because where that Final Fantasy has gone is the Final Fantasy VII remake games. So it's like it can be off. They can do their Nomura style weird Final Fantasy stuff over there with the remake games, and they can kind of live over there. But I'm glad that the main Final Fantasy is coming back to this more, almost like it looked like witchery to me in a lot of areas of its like dark fantasy, even darker fantasy than the old Final Fantasy games, which had darkness to them, but I wouldn't quite associate them with this. It just feels like it's such a cool coming back to some of the roots of the franchise while expanding them in a slightly different direction. And I'm sure some of that is what Final Fantasy XIV does, and I haven't played any Final Fantasy XIV. So going and like taking this team and having them do some of the stuff that they're doing on the MMO side and putting that into a big single player game that you don't have to play like 1,000 hours to get to like the new stuff, like with the MMO, that makes me extremely happy. Like I did not expect coming into this to be really, really excited about a new Final Fantasy game. And I am extremely excited about this game.
100%. And you're right. I mean, Final Fantasy has been in this Tetsuya Nomura dominated era for a while, where even if he's not been like the lead director, it's very clearly like the only one that feels like it was kind of not in his style was 12.
Yeah.
But like certainly 7, 8, 10, 13, 15, again, whether he worked on them directly or not, very much kind of in his vein of like hyper bad melodrama, big zippers and stuff. And some of those we love, like 7, which is not Nomura narratively that much, but design-wise is. But 7 Remake got Nomura and is lesser for it. And yeah, this feels like something else. It feels like the same kind of break we got in like the 90s with Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Switching to PlayStation 1, because it is the MMO team who have been kind of autonomous for a while, building their own version of Final Fantasy that people clearly reacted well to, and from all accounts, The development of this game is the anti-Final Fantasy 15. It sounds like they've been working on it for a while, quietly. It is going well. They've built up a team. It's not having a bunch of turnover. They're just making the game. Jason Schreier from Kotaku did a little digging, and he said, as much as we would all joke, oh, we're not going to see this for another 5 years. It's actually pretty far into development. They're announcing it because they're pretty confident in it, and that we're probably going to see it. Maybe not immediately, but sooner than later. And that's cool, and that makes me very happy. And it feels like all the right choices were made, and it's a very good trailer. If you haven't seen it, kicks ass.
A fantastic trailer because it does show. Because I think the thing that makes me feel confident in it is that this is the first time they're showing it, and it has so much gameplay stuff in it. And one thing we do know is shortly after Devil May Cry 5 released, actually I think it might have been a little bit before the game actually came out. One of the major combat designers at Capcom who worked on DMC5, he worked on, I think, Dragon's Dogma and a couple of other things as well. He moved and got hired by Square Enix. And I don't know if it's been officially confirmed, but I think everyone's assuming that this is the game that he'd been working on. Because as soon as you see what some of the combat stuff is, the immediate thought I had was Devil May Cry. Because it has a very, one-person character action focus to it. You can see he has different kind of weapons or abilities that seem to be associated with the summons, because there's one point where he has these big fucking magic gauntlet things he's fighting with, and then sometimes he has phoenix wings. So it just looks like they are really committing to this more character action direction, which is, I think, smart because Final Fantasy has been in a while in this weird place, and you see this in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you see it in 15, and you see it in Kingdom Hearts, is I think where it originally comes from. But they want this more action-focused thing, but they're still very precious about some of the turn-based trappings of Final Fantasy. And I think I want them to commit one way or the other. I think we talked about this with Final Fantasy VII Remake, of just commit to either do some old school Dragon Quest XI style, let's just do some turn-based stuff, or just commit and really do the action stuff, because clearly the teams at Square Enix are talented at building some of these action systems. They're just not fully realized, and this looks more like they're just heading into, let's double down on some of the action combat stuff, and it looks really cool.
Absolutely, because and we talked about this with the 7 remake, Sean, but this may sound heretical to say, but it's true. The turn-based part of Final Fantasy has never been its strong suit. They've just never done it particularly well. I think Final Fantasy 1 and 3 basically just use the Dragon Quest system, and it's fine, but there's nothing special about it. Final Fantasy 2 is a nightmare for its battle system. 4 through, 9 were all active time battle, and that has its own amount of suck. Final Fantasy X is the only one they've ever made that I think we can all agree they nailed it, but then they never did it again. Even in 10-2, they just removed it. Just they made this amazing JRPG system, and then they left it to other developers like the Digimon story people to use it, And they never used it again. So, abandon it. Do something new. I don't think Final Fantasy is if they announced Dragon Quest XII and it had no turn-based, I'd be heresy. That's bad. But, that's because Dragon Quest is really tied into that. Final Fantasy isn't. I don't think Final Fantasy's identity is tied to turn-based combat. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree. One last thing, thinking about this trailer, because I have no real experience with Final Fantasy XIV outside of the soundtracks to Final Fantasy XIV are on Spotify. And last year, I got a Spotify subscription to play music in my classroom, and the fucking soundtrack is so good. And it's clearly, I don't know, because multiple composers work on 14 because there's a huge amount of music, but it's clearly one of the 14 people who did at least the music for this trailer, because the music on the trailer is phenomenal. And they do these darker versions of the main Final Fantasy theme and the arpeggio, the prelude theme at the beginning and then at the end of the trailer. And then the main music that's new for the trailer, it's just so good. And that's one of those things that at the part of the trailer where it comes up and says the legacy of the crystals has shaped our history, and then this male choir comes in and just belts out this incredible new main theme. It's fuck, dude, Final Fantasy music is so good. And this trailer, it's the whole trailer is phenomenal. I like what they're indicating of the direction they're doing with the gameplay. I like what they're showing of where they're going with the story. But it is the music that always sells Final Fantasy, and this trailer had it in spades.
Yeah, I think if I were allowed to like make a wish upon a Final Fantasy crystal for like what game I would like to see made, this is pretty much it. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so we'll see. All right. Next up, Sean, we got our first extended look at Spider-Man Miles Morales, an extended cinematic and demo. It was Christmas time. Miles is walking with a buddy through Harlem. His mom is running for city council, so she was going to have a little rally. We then had Brian Horton, the creative director at Insomniac, tell us that this game is set a year after the first game. Roxxon and the Underground, run by the Tinkerer, are fighting. There's these two criminal organizations. The gameplay transitioned into this big fight on a bridge where Miles jumps into the middle of it. He uses his cool electric suit powers to fight. There was a big explosion. The Tinkerer gets away. Miles fights some baddies. Shit goes crazy. Bridge breaks apart. You have your classic Spider-Man move where he has to like pull the bridge together with his webs, and that's kind of how it ended. We'll talk about the weird release stuff and everything. Let's talk about that in a minute, Sean. But for now, let's just talk about how the game looks. And I would say it looks good.
Oh, it looks fucking great. I was very happy. Like, this was like the main thing I was expecting coming into this event, was getting the release date and the price and seeing this game. And probably more Demon Souls. Those were like the things that I expected, which is why Final Fantasy being there was like, oh my god, I wasn't expecting a game like this to be at the show. But yeah, it looks really, really cool. I think it's very funny to have this like whole demo come out a couple of weeks after that Marvel's Avengers game, and you have the two Marvel superhero Tears of Giant action scene on a bridge sequence. And the action scene, because I played the beta, which had that whole bridge sequence sans all the Miss Marvel story stuff, and it was fine in that demo. But what they showed here, like just as an action set piece when the bridge starts falling apart, and fucking, there's a great shot where Miles like swings like around a bridge, and like the camera, he almost like hits the camera and it turns to follow him. Like there's just a lot of, it reminded me of everything I love about that Marvel Spider-Man game, which is all like the action and the story and the character stuff, but it's also like the handful of big action set pieces they did in that game fucking ruled. And, you know, I would like to see more just like Miles swinging around the city at Christmas time and all that, because that's really what the game is. But it is fun to see this and be like, oh, right, this game has incredible production values and like really great direction and like a sense of action and tension and pacing. And all that stuff, and just watching the bridge crumble apart, it looked incredibly impressive to me.
Oh, absolutely. It looks really good. Miles' suit looks so fucking good. They have a very good Miles Morales Spider-Man suit, which also immediately made me start salivating for all the alternate suits we're going to get, because those are sure to be very good. But he looks great. His powers look like unique enough from the Peter Parker Spider-Man in the Insomniac game that made me excited to like learn the new moves. I think they showed off a good like variety of fight stuff in this trailer. Gave us our little kind of story tease. Reminded me that like, you know, I think the Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse obviously made a bigger impression because it was his own movie, but I also do really like this Miles Morales that we met in the Insomniac games, and I'm excited to see him kind of come into his own here. It's like, yeah, it's not like it was hugely unexpected, anything they showed. Like, we knew the first game was good, we knew this is more of that. But like, you know, just like how distinct the setting looks, where having it be Christmas and having it be snowy, kind of in like a Batman Returns kind of style, was like, yeah, I'm down for that. That sounds really fun. And it looks like a game I really want to play.
Yeah, they made sure to have like that walking section at the beginning where they put as many puddles on the ground as possible to show off the ray trace reflections of all like the colored lights. Because that is the thing that like, because we'll talk about it in a sec, that they've also said the game was coming to PS4, and I'm really curious what the PS4, like the distinction between the two will be, visually speaking, because I was really impressed by the way it looked, specifically some of the stuff that they're clearly doing with the lighting, and, you know, I don't know how much of it is ray tracing, how much of it is not. I think it's obvious the reflections are ray traced, but there's something that they do in that walking sequence you can see with the colored lighting and like the fogginess of like down on the streets of New York City, when I have been in New York City during Christmas time, and it really captured this like really specific thing, the way that the neon lights disperse through the really heavy kind of like fog and mist that you get between the buildings. And they just like, it's a very specific kind of trick of lighting I don't think I've ever seen a game actually execute well, and it just built the atmosphere of the scene really effectively. So I'm curious to see how much of that is like this is just really good art direction, and how much of that is motivated by like the next gen tech that they have at their disposal.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the release conditions for this game, because the trailer in the show just said holiday 2020.
Which is what they said at the last like tease or whatever during the summer.
Which weirded us all out, because it's like, well, wait, is the PS5 launching and then this is coming out a month later? What the hell's going on? They later clarified it will be a launch game, so it is coming out either November 12th or November 19th, depending on where you are in the world, and when the PS5 is coming out. We learned it will be a $49.99 game, so a $50 game, or $70. There's an Ultimate Edition that comes with a code for Spider-Man Remastered, so the PS5 version of that game. And then there will also be a PS4 version of the game, so it is cross-platform, or cross-generation at least. So, yeah, I understand why they didn't put the PS4 logo on there in this version, because they were trying to hype the PS5. How did no one catch shit? We probably should have said coming at launch to the PS5. What the hell?
Yeah,
Because this happened several times.
Yeah, because I feel like all they needed to do was at the very end of the event put up a thing that said, and these are our launch games, which is what they did. Like, it was, I think, literally like 10 minutes after the event ended, there was a post up on the PS blog that had all of, like, the information, and it had, here's how expensive the games are. That's where we learned that, you know, games are going to be $70. That's just where we are. If Sony's doing it,
we'll talk about it, yeah.
Everyone's doing it. But all that information was in that blog post, including, here is the launch lineup, which is a bunch of games, including Miles Morales and Demon's Souls. And none of that was in the presentation, and that is, like, utterly bizarre to me. I have no, you know, like, I assumed that this game was launched because, to me, holiday 2020, that just means launch. Because it would have been the most bizarre thing in the world to have a game be that close to the release of the console, and not just make it a launch game, would be utterly absurd. So I assumed that this game was going to be a launch game, but you want someone to just say on your stream that like millions of people are watching, and it's coming out with the console, and so is Demon's Souls, and so are these games.
But it was extra confusing because they did on other games, like Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition and Fortnite, both said available at launch. So, like, they had the language, but they used it for some games and not others.
I mean, those would have just, that's like the third parties doing that, right? So it's like Sony didn't put that language in those trailers. So it is.
But Sony put the whole show together. They knew, like, I feel like that it was an oversight that, like, someone didn't fix that. Like, that was a
it's absolutely an oversight. I'm just saying that it's not like Sony went in and said, we're going to say that Devil May Cry 5 comes at launch, and we're not going to put that on Spider-Man.
So, very weird, but, you know, it's coming. I have not been able to get any daylight on this, Sean. If you have Spider-Man on PS4, the Insomniac game, do you get the PS5 remastered version, or do you have to buy the $70 Miles Morales version to get it?
So I don't think you get the remastered version. Obviously, you would be able to play it backwards compatible, and that would have like more stabilized frame rate, and it would top out the dynamic resolution and stuff. Like, they did release a short blog post talking about that Spider-Man remastered, and it does sound like they're doing quite a bit of work on it. It's going to be like 60 frames per second. It has ray tracing. It has a bunch of new, like, they said that it's a whole new model for Peter Parker. It sounds like they're kind of taking a lot of the work they did for Miles Morales and probably Spider-Man 2 and converting that into stuff that will work on that original game. Including there's like new trophies. There's like new costumes and stuff in it. It sounds like it sounds like it's a totally new SKU of the game. Like by new trophies, I mean both. I think there's maybe a new difficulty mode is what the trophies are associated with, but it's also like I don't think your saves go over because this is a different version of Spider-Man for Marvel Spider-Man or whatever.
Yeah. So, because if that's the case, maybe I'll just get the $70 version of Miles Morales.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I don't know. It's weird because Sony's just all over the map on like some games upgrade to a new PS5 version, some don't. Some, I mean, and the whole industry is, but it's not. At least Xbox has that kind of like core where their messaging is for at least like their games. It's very clear what's happening. It kind of seems all over the map for this, but we'll see. If it's only $20 more, maybe that's worth it. But yeah.
Yeah, I will probably get that version of the game. I mean, I'll wait to see. I'm sure they'll put out a trailer at some point that will show what the Spider-Man remastered looks like. And if it looks like, okay, they did put a lot of stuff into it, then I'll probably pick it up.
Yeah. All right, so that's Spider-Man. Then we got another very big announcement. This is something we knew was coming because it has been rumored up the wazoo, but we finally got our first look at it, which is the new Harry Potter game This is the big open world Hogwarts game. It's called Hogwarts Legacy. It is set in Hogwarts of the late 1800s. In the trailer, they showed a lot of school life stuff. They showed a lot of like Hogwarts and the surrounding areas. It's very much the movie Hogwarts, like basically from A Prisoner of Azkaban is the movie where they kind of solidified the design. It's basically that. It's got some outside areas. It's got some other areas you go to. It seemed to me, Sean, like it must be a create a character game.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even, is this a Destiny kind of game? It almost felt like it could be with like going out on missions outside of Hogwarts. I wasn't quite sure about. They obviously did not show what the gameplay is like. But it's at least a create a character game. It's called Hogwarts Legacy. It's coming 2021. We learned after the show it is going to be on everything. It's going to be on PS4 and Xbox One, and then also the PS5 and the Series X and PC. I think maybe even Stadia. It's going to be everywhere. But yeah, and it is the kind of thing that if you are a Harry Potter fan and you've been living under a rock and did not know that J.K. Rowling has come out loud and proud as the world's worst transphobe, you might be excited for it. If you have not had your head in the sand, you look at this and go, God damn it. It's kind of my reaction.
Even as someone who doesn't care about Harry Potter, and so this game is not like for me, that trailer bummed me out so much because it looked like a trailer for a really cool game. Like it looked like a huge amount of work has gone into it. It looks like the kind of thing that if you are into Harry Potter, it is like the kind of game you've probably been wanting them to make for a long time. That it's like it's its own thing. It's not like tied specifically to any of the books or the stories of the movies and stuff. It just gets to be wholly its own thing. And it all looked cool. And it's just like, fucking J.K. Rowling, motherfucker. Like, god damn it. Like, all this cool shit that these people are doing with this game just feels wasted now because of her, like, disgusting bigotry. It was just such a huge bummer to watch this and feel like this should have been a really awesome reveal for the people making the game and the people interested in the game, and it just has to have this awful shadow hanging over everything connected to it.
To the degree that Warner Brothers had on their site a little in their fact, like, J.K. Rowling is not working on this game and has no involvement in it. And it's like, I mean, it's good that they feel the pressure finally to have to say that. I can only imagine in the months and years to come if she continues on the path she's been down, because she has not shut up about this.
No.
She has been very vocal about it. They're gonna have to distance themselves from her more and more, is just the fact, and we'll see what form that takes. You know, I saw a lot of conversation online about this game of people who are big Harry Potter fans and feel excited about this, but are feeling ethically unsure. And, you know, let me just say this. There is no way to be an ethical consumer of capitalism. There just is no way. If you want to play this game, that's fine. That is not you inviting violence on trans people. And if you really do feel bad about that, you know, I saw one person say, I'm going to buy this game, and I'm also going to give whatever I pay for the game, $70, to a trans-related charity of choice. Go for it. Do that. That's fine. Go in with open eyes and understand these things. I don't think it necessarily makes you a bad person who want to play a Harry Potter video game. But I also think if you have maybe my reaction, which is Harry Potter is just so tainted I can't look at it without feeling sad and grossed out, that is also an okay reaction. You know, I guess my basic line is, it is not your fault J.K. Rowling is a horrible transphobe unless you are doing stuff like defending her. Then it becomes your fault. But, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense, Sean?
Yeah. That's my feelings on this kind of stuff as well, is that, like, you are not personally responsible for that. And I think trying to, like, trace the money or whatever and, like, how much of the money goes to her and, like, that, like, I think that's, like, taking it way too far for, like, what you would estimate as your, like, moral culpability in something like this. I think it is entirely your responsibility is to be informed about what J.K. Rowling is doing and that her potential involvement in the game and her potential benefit from it, and to understand that. And if you still want to buy the game, to buy the game knowing that. Buying it in ignorance or just sort of saying like, it's not a big deal and just like not caring about it, I think that is the thing that makes you kind of a shitty person. And it is just entirely up to, can you play this game or watch the movie, read the book, whatever the thing is, knowing all the stuff around it and still get something of value out of it for yourself, like, then go for it. And that's the thing that, like, for me, it's not Harry Potter. For me, it is Ender's Game and Orson Scott Card. Because Ender's Game, when I was a kid, was one of my favorite sci-fi books. And then when I grew up, I came to know, Orson Scott Card is in a similar way to J.K. Rowling, and probably even worse, I would say, than J.K. Rowling, like an awful homophobe and just disgusting bigot, and promotes all this awful shit. And I have not been able to ever go back to any of those books. Like, I didn't go see the movie or anything, and I'm not doing that out of, like, a sense of protest. I'm mostly doing it because I would not get anything out of reading one of his books again, or connecting with one of those properties again, because I would not be able to focus on it. I'd only be thinking about that shitty fucking dude.
Yeah. Death of the author is a theoretical academia thing. It is not something that is really possible to do with living people who are out there on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So then we got our little Black Ops Cold War Call of Duty showcase, where Raven Software's creative director came out and talked about the power of the PS5. He talked about Cold War. He introduced a demo from the first campaign mission, apparently dealing with the Iran hostage crisis, which, in my notes, I just wrote, good God. Mm-hmm. And then there was a lot of silly Call of Duty action. I did not think it was very interesting. In fact, I thought it was pretty ridiculous, because basically, if you didn't see this, it was basically like the airplane sequence from the end of Fast and Furious 6, where they're chasing this airplane down an impossibly long runway. And it was basically that, but with somehow even higher tech gadgets than the Fast and Furious people have, even though this is set in 1981. I just thought it looked kind of dumb and bad, and tying it into the actual Iran hostage crisis was gross. I don't think this game looks like that good.
Yeah, like it looks like, and I mean this in like the technical ways, it looks like a step down from Call of Duty Modern Warfare to me. Like, just watching from the first person perspective, the character move, just, it doesn't have any of that sense of weight in animation that Modern Warfare had, that they just really kind of updated the whole look and feel of Call of Duty in some subtle and some like more like obvious ways. And this just looks like Black Ops 5, whatever number it would be if they put the fucking number on it, but they're too much of cowards to tell people Final Fantasy's over here telling you this is Final Fantasy 16. You can't even say Call of Duty 12 or whatever the fuck it is. But yeah, it is.
We're way past 12.
Yeah, they're definitely past 12. They're maybe past where Final Fantasy is with the rate that they put out fucking Call of Duty games. But so it's, I'm with you that it didn't really interest me. It made me sort of fully realize that, okay, yes, the way that this studio system works with Call of Duty at Activision is that, like, I'm not going to get a Call of Duty game I might be interested in until Infinity Ward comes up, because I want the sequel to Modern Warfare. I don't want the sequel to the older Call of Duty game. It's just kind of like a weird split between those, that within that franchise.
Sean, I have news.
Yeah.
Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is Call of Duty 17. So it is, in fact, one past Final Fantasy.
Wow. Yeah.
Own
up to it, Call of Duty. Be proudful of your ridiculous streak of annual releases. Like, just let everybody know this is the 17th Call of Duty game.
But Sean, I agree, and I've been playing a lot of Modern Warfare this summer, and honestly, Modern Warfare feels like a next-gen Call of Duty, like that just came early. It really feels like, not just in its graphical presentation, which is stunning, but as you say, in like how it deals with like weight and movement and just those kind of basic things. And then this, and Infinity Ward had 3 years on Modern Warfare. They had to throw this thing together probably in less than 2 because of all the development shifts. But like, I mean, you can tell this is more Black Ops. Even though it is set in the past, it still has all the future tech for some reason.
I do find it really interesting that they had the creative director at Raven be the one. Like, there was nobody from Treyarch introducing or talking about Call of Duty on this thing, which makes me wonder if like that's what the split is on this year's game. I wonder if Raven basically is just making the campaign and Treyarch is making the multiplayer. Because I just was really... Because the guy popped up and his thing said creative director Raven Software at the bottom. I'm like... Because, to me, Raven Software made, like, Singularity and some of those older PC games. PC first-person shooters. And they kind of... Then they got turned into Call of Duty Map Pack Factory. And so in my heart of hearts, Raven Software is a studio that died 10 years ago. So seeing that name up there, I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Oh, right. They're just, like, chained to Call of Duty now. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if like Treyarch is sort of working on other stuff in the background for one of their future Call of Duty games, and yeah, it's more of a 50-50 split than maybe we thought. But we'll see. They are doing a multiplayer alpha this weekend on PlayStation.
Well, it's already ended.
Oh, it already ended. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
and I was going to play it, and then I got up this morning and I was like thinking about what are we going to talk about on the podcast. I was like, because it's like, oh yeah, we'll talk about the PlayStation thing. What is that? The PlayStation thing. Call of Duty was at the PlayStation thing. Oh shit, there was that like alpha. I should do a Sean's Beta Corner, and then I went to go download it and it was already over. So.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
All right, Resident Evil 8 got another trailer. Lots of creepy stuff, including a storybook portion that looked like something out of Coraline, like a stop-motion horror movie, which I really liked. The title treatment is 8-age Village, VIII, Resident Evil. I'm still not sure what the title of this game is, Sean. I've seen it called Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 Village, Village Resident Evil. I'm just going to call it Resident Evil 8. It looks really good. It's coming out 2021. Nothing really huge new here, but it still looks good.
I'm going to call it 8 Biohazard Village Resident Evil. That's my title for this game.
There we go. We then got another look at Deathloop, which is the what's the studio that makes that?
It's the Dishonored people.
It's the Dishonored people.
Arcane.
Yeah.
Arcane Leon,
yeah.
Specifically.
Yes, I will admit that I have found all the trailers for Deathloop kind of loud and annoying, and I thought this one was especially loud and annoying, so I kind of tuned it out. It is coming Q2 2021 as a PS5 console exclusive, so basically you can play this anywhere but Xbox. Yeah, I feel like they have maybe hit the point of diminishing returns on marketing for this game because it has been at like every PlayStation thing, and I feel like I get it and they can shut up about it, but that's just
me. Well, I think like because this game was going to be a launch game and then it got delayed, so I suspect that like we wouldn't have had this trailer if it was just going to be a launch game. I will say that as someone who like played Dishonored and is interested in this game a lot, I actually like this trailer quite a bit because every time they show more of Deathloop, it looks more and more like they're doing with Deathloop what I wanted Dishonored 2 to be, which is taking some stuff that like Hitman does and putting it into the formula and then making it a little bit more action focused. Because I think Dishonored 2 to me was just a lot more of the same, and I wanted them to make more changes. Because what the trailer at least implies with this time with Deathloop was that you can do different things in different missions, and you like go through them multiple times with like whatever the loop mechanic is, and depending on what you do, you can change the outcome of missions to cause characters to go to different places in what at least what they were describing in a very Hitman-esque fashion, where you learn this one time you play through this level, oh, this character is over here doing this thing, and if I blow up this satellite or whatever it is, it will cause this character to go to this party and I can assassinate him in this way now. And it had a lot more of that kind of feel to it. And if that is what the mission structure is, like that is 100% what I want Arcane to do and where to push their games. Because Dishonored was fun and it had all these different ways you could complete missions, but the structure of the game was built like a very standard, straightforward, mission-based single-player campaign that didn't do anything to encourage replayability. Whereas if you do this, and you have these systems and structures in the game that like really incentivize you replaying multiple times and using information you've learned on different playthroughs to change how you play it, that's where this genre of games needs to go, and it looks like maybe they're doing it with Deathloop. And if that's the case, I think that would be really rad.
Very true, but I will say when you gave me that whole spiel, all I could think of, Hitman 3 is coming out in January.
But I'll take a first-person Hitman style game where you blow people's heads off. Like I will take both okay. Hitman 3 and Deathloop, please.
Absolutely. Then they showed off Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. It'll be available digitally at launch. It is the nice enhanced version of Devil May Cry 5. Yeah, everyone loves Devil May Cry 5. I have not gotten to it yet. I need to play through. I have Devil May Cry 1 through 4. I need to play those. But they were on sale on Xbox, so I will get to 5 eventually. This looks like a solid little upgrade.
Yeah, it looks rad. They're adding Virgil in as a playable character, which is sort of tradition. That's what they did with 3 and 4 with those special editions of the game. They're adding in ray tracing. There's it's a ridiculous number of different modes that they have. They have a native 4K 30 frames per second mode, which I don't know, with all these bells and whistles and ray tracing and everything. Don't know why you'd ever want to play Devil May Cry at 30 frames. Sounds awful. Then there's like a 1080p. I think it's like 1080p, like upscaled to 1440, something like that. 60 frames per second with ray tracing and some of the extra graphical features. That sounds like what I'll play at and what most people would want to play at. And then there's also a like 1080p, none of the next gen bells and whistles, none of the ray tracing, all that fancy bullshit, but it's up to 120 frames per second. If you have a TV, like I don't have a TV that would support that, but if you have one, there'll be some kind of 120 frames per second mode, which sounds like if you can do it, you probably want to do that because Devil May Cry is a game that you would want the frame rate for. And there's also a new difficulty mode that has some ridiculous name. I don't remember what it is. But they show you brief glimpses of it in the trailer, where the difficulty mode is basically, what if we took Devil May Cry and used all of, like, the crazy CPU overhead we now have with the next-gen consoles and just filled it with, like, a billion fucking enemies, and it almost looks like a Dynasty Warriors game. It's utterly absurd, and that is honestly the thing, more than anything I'm excited with for this next-gen version of the game, is just to replay through it as Virgil and just have just fucking like 50 dudes on the screen. It looked absolutely crazy. So it looks like a very cool kind of like, it looks like it's worth it to upgrade, especially since you're getting all the Virgil DLC with the upgrade. This looks like a much better version of this than like what Control is doing. More work, more new content. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, that's actually more of an update than I thought. I didn't realize there was that much added into it. If I have not played this game yet, Sean, should I just wait and do this one, this version when it comes out?
Yeah. It looks like it's the like definitive version of the game.
Awesome. Then we got our update on Oddworld Soulstorm, where Lorne Lanning, the director, came out. Oddworld Soulstorm, I did my research, was a game announced in 2016. Mm-hmm. It has been delayed many times since. He talked about the power of the PS5, and I realized I don't know what Oddworld is. I've heard about it. I've never asked, and at this point I'm too embarrassed to ask. So, yes.
Do you want me to tell you what Oddworld is?
Yeah, what the fuck is Oddworld?
So Oddworld is a series of games that started on the PS1 with its Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exodus, Munch's Odyssey, and Stranger's Wrath, I think are the 4 Oddworld games, and Stranger's Wrath was an original Xbox. And it's basically, this one is like the first 2, the Abe games, in that it's a side scroller sort of platforming puzzle game, more or less, in the vein of something like a Flashback, which I don't know if, or like almost like more like Prince of Persia, like the old Prince of Persia with like really deliberate animation, and it's less of like a Mario platformer and more it has a bunch of weird systems and mechanics, and it's very deliberate, and you're more solving puzzles. Set in a really cool world where you're playing as Abe, and he's sort of enslaved to the mega corporation, and he's trying to escape and sort of lead his people out of the mega corporation to freedom, and that's where I think this game picks up. I've never like been a huge Oddworld person. I sort of dabbled in the Abe games because I played them at a friend's house, and then I played a lot of Stranger's Wrath on the original Xbox, and that game is fucking awesome, or at least it was when I played it in like 2004. So I'm actually kind of curious about this because they did do a re-release of the original 2 Oddworld games on PS4. So I think I have that because it was a PS Plus game. So I might replay those and then maybe pick this up because it looks cool. I like Lorne Lanning. He's been making these games since like 1998 or some shit. So I'm glad that Oddworld is still a thing. It's a name that disappeared for a long time.
Yeah, that's probably why I don't know about it. Yeah. So, no, that sounds cool. And yeah, is it basically a PS5 exclusive?
It's PS5 and PC. I think from what I understand, I think Digital Foundry, one of the guys at Digital Foundry says he played the game at an event, and basically the implication from what he played was that it would not be a thing in a CPU sense, because there's a lot of complex system stuff that goes on that would probably be portable to previous gen consoles. So it seems like it's probably going to be next gen and PC only.
Awesome. Well, then we had a look at a new Five Nights at Freddy's game. It looks like the title is Security Breach, just a short, creepy little trailer. I've never really been into Five Nights at Freddy's, but I know some people like it.
Yeah, it's very popular with the kids, from what I understand.
Yes. And then, but fuck all that shit, Sean.
Yeah.
Then we got the good stuff.
Uh-huh.
Then we got the most hype I was at this entire event, which was the big trailer for Demon's Souls, the remake by Bluepoint Games of the From Software classic, precursor to Dark Souls. They started with sort of a cool cinematic trailer showing the revival of the main knight dude, and then we got a big gameplay look. running around through the kind of main forest graveyard that you start in. You killed some zombie soldiers, got to a bonfire, moved to the next area. I think we were in the early hub area because I've played a little Demon Souls, but then we went out from that because Demon Souls is kind of like Dark Souls 2 where it's this branching thing from a main hub. Showed some different encounters, showed some very heavy shield blocking in kind of old Dark Souls 1 kind of fashion. We got to a mist door, went through to the next part of the castle, just kind of showing off the graphics, which are fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Went through a mist door to a big boss. He shielded, he dodged, he rolled, he sliced, and then he died, and we got our "you died" text. And the only thing that was even a little disappointing about this trailer is they need to fix the font, because "you died," the font is bad. But other than that, Sean, we then got a sizzle reel of all the different bosses and encounters through the game, including a cool dragon on a bridge. This looks so fucking good. And I think the coolest thing about it for me is that, like, FromSoft games always look cool. They have phenomenal art direction, but they are not made with, like, the budget and time of, like, a giant AAA game in terms of graphical fidelity. And this is basically a classic FromSoft game made like a AAA PlayStation first-party game in terms of graphics. And I just, like, salivating looking at this trailer. It looks so fucking good, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, it looks utterly phenomenal. And if you watch the trailer that they uploaded after the stream to their YouTube channel, that one was a 60 frames per second trailer. So the game's going to have a 30 frames per second mode, which I don't know if they've specified what's turned on and what's turned off, but there will be a 30 frames and a 60 frames mode. And the frame rate, at least in that trailer, at 60 frames per second seemed basically flawless. It just is, the, like, density of the environments is really spectacular, while it still is, like, really visually readable. Like, it's never distracting from your ability to look at and, like, distinguish enemies from the environments and stuff. It just is, I mean, it's based on that trailer, it looks like the best looking game I've seen. Like, it is the game that's like, oh, this is a next gen game that's also in a more realistic art style, which I think makes it a little bit easier to, like, pick out as feeling next gen ish compared to Ratchet and Clank, which has, it just ends up looking more and more like a Pixar movie, which is still awesome, and Ratchet and Clank looks great. But this just has this, like, it kind of just kicks you in the chest with, oh my god, with this kind of more realistic art style, shit just looks really fucking good and just pops really well, especially at that fucking frame rate.
Yes.
It looks absolutely spectacular. And then I saw something where someone went and they compared some of the footage to that area, because it is basically just the tutorial area from Demon Souls, and he just kind of goes through the whole tutorial area and then dies at the end, and then you get the sizzle. And someone was doing, like, some comparisons with the original game, and they showed that at that bonfire you go to just teleports you to this other area. In the original game, it was like a 10-second load, and here it's just like, it's a snap and it's done, right? It is just, like, faster than going through a fucking fog wall in the old Dark Souls games, and that was, like, a very subtle, load times. Like, you can just teleport to this other area, and rather than having a 10-second load screen where you're, like, just reading, like, weird tips and stuff for that whole time, you're just there. Looks really good. Looks really cool.
I can't wait. I can't wait. So there was some confusion on this game was the one that, like, I don't know what the hell happened in the chain of communication, that, like, this trailer in the show had no release date given at all, and they never in the live stream made it clear that this is a launch game. It was Jeff Keighley's Twitter account that broke the news that it was a launch game. Meanwhile, the 60 FPS trailer that got uploaded to YouTube that you mentioned, Sean, which if you haven't seen, you should watch because it's gorgeous, had a card at the end saying that it will be a PS5 console exclusive, timed, and also coming to PC. So everyone's like, oh, holy shit, they're also putting this out on PC. The background being that's kind of weird because while Demon Souls is a FromSoft game, it was completely funded and owned by Sony Online Entertainment. So it is a Sony first-party game. Yeah. So that would be a pretty big move. But then they took down the trailer a few hours later, and then they removed it and like, no, it's just a PS5 game. So there was a lot of confusion. The basic takeaway is that this is a PS5 game only, which would make sense. It is $70. Our new standard for game pricing, and it will be available on launch. Which makes this one of the best launches I would say PlayStation has ever had. I mean, we'll talk about that more later, but holy crap.
Yeah, because it was just such a weird journey of watching the trailer with the game, because we had talked about on a podcast a few weeks ago that indications were that this game was targeted for launch based on it getting rated in a bunch of different territories a few months ago, and that like people were like looking at that information and lining it up with Miles Morales, and we knew when Miles Morales basically was coming out, and it's like, well, it seems like this would come out a bit around the same time, and so I was going in being like, come on, please, I want Demon's Souls to be a launch game. That would be really cool. And then the trailer ended with no date thing at all, and I assumed that meant that probably the game had slipped to like February or something like that. And then after the show, it's like, oh, it is actually a launch game. Okay, awesome. And it's not I think you have the language in here, Jonathan, of what the trailer said, which was such a weird, not available on other consoles for a limited time, which is a bizarre sentence to put at the end of a trailer for a game that is an IP owned by Sony. That there's absolutely no way that this game would be on fucking Xbox. And it was just like, what is happening? And then now it's totally settled. Launch game. It just looks fucking awesome. Like, it looks like maybe the best first-party launch game that Sony has ever had.
Absolutely, and I do want to know what the fuck was the breakdown in, like, the communication chain that led to it not being a launch game in the show, and then accidentally saying it was going to be on PC, and then taking a weirdly long time to clarify that. It was a weird shit show, but the point is, this is the reason to buy a PS5 at launch.
Yeah. The best theory I've seen about how that weird sentence ended up at the end of that Demon's Souls trailer is that it was going to be in the Final Fantasy 15 or 16 thing, because Final Fantasy 16 is definitely going to be on Xbox at some point. I think there's no question about that. And that kind of language would make sense for that game. I don't know how that...
Yeah.
Because Sony's official comment on it was a human error mistake, basically. So I don't know who and how that error got made, but it was very weird.
Yep. The next entry I have on my outline, Sean, is just the word Fortnite.
Uh-huh.
Because basically they had a 30-second sizzle reel, and then Fortnite will be on PS5. So in the headline section of the paper called Duh, that's your entry.
Yeah, it is. Instead of doing the Grand Theft Auto one for this one, they did Fortnite, right? That's like, you have to have Grand Theft Auto, you have to have Fortnite. Eventually, like, next time they have one of these, they'll say, and Minecraft will be coming to PS5. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for letting me know.
I mean, thankfully, unlike the GTA one, this was not 5 minutes long. This was just like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So that was nice. All right. Then they introduced something they're calling the PS Plus collection. It is a new PS Plus benefit for PS5 owners, where you will have a collection of major PS4 games that, if you have PS Plus, will be free for you. Basically, it's the games we sell for $20 collection. It is, here's the list. It's God of War, Monster Hunter World, Final Fantasy XV, Fallout 4, Mortal Kombat 10, Uncharted 4, Ratchet & Clank, Days Gone, Until Dawn, Detroit, Battlefield 1, Infamous Second Son, Batman Arkham Knight, The Last Guardian, Last of Us, Persona 5, Resident Evil 7, and Bloodborne. Literally, most of those are just the PlayStation Greatest Hits games that come in red cases and sell for $20. Basically, all of those you'll get to play on PS5. You know, it's a nice little benefit. It's kind of, you know, a little bit a competitor to like Game Pass, but more it's just like, you know, if you missed a PS4 or if you had a PS4 but missed a couple of games and you need extra stuff to play on PS5, here are some of the big ones that you missed. It's not like Game Pass in that they're putting in anything there that they would actually lose money on. Like, it's not Last of Us 2 or Ghost of Tsushima or something like that, or Spider-Man. It is older games and stuff, but it's nice if you miss some of those or want to see how they'll run on PS5. There you go. It didn't make me realize, Sean, they have not confirmed how PS Plus is going to work on PS5, whether they'll still do the monthly free games or not.
I assume
they would. I wonder if... I don't think it will. I wonder if this is like a growing thing that will replace that. But we'll see.
I don't think so. Like, I've seen a lot of people look at this and be like, this is the Game Pass thing. And I don't feel like this is a response to Game Pass so much as it's Sony trying to make a compelling argument for someone who was Xbox this whole previous generation to switch over to PS5. Because if you were going to buy an Xbox Series S and then you look at this, like, you'd be saving a shit ton of money. Like, because I mean, these are some of the best games that have come out in the past like 7 years, right? I mean, you're looking at God of War, Monster Hunter World, Uncharted 4, Infamous, Batman Arkham Knight, Last Guardian, Last of Us, Persona 5, and Bloodborne. All those games have featured in my top 10s of those respective years. Most of them are the top 5s. So it's like you're getting some fucking killer games. And if you missed that whole PS4 generation and you were only Xbox, this would be a compelling reason to switch over and be like getting a significant amount of value. But as you noted, like the way that it's set up is that if you're someone who owned a PS4 the whole time, chances are if you were interested in any of these games, you played them, right? Like I don't own Detroit Become Human or Battlefield 1. I don't own those games because I don't really want to play them. So it's not really a value for us. It's a value for people who want to switch.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that in a Game Pass comparison, all the non-PS4 exclusives here are also on Game Pass. FF15, Monster Hunter World, Mortal Kombat 10, all Arkham Knight, those are all Game Pass games as well. So it's like pulling from that same pool, and then it's the... and honestly, I kind of wonder why they're even kind of highlighted those, because the focus should be the actual PS4 games. Because if you want to switch, that's where the money is. That's the good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine they basically got those other games in there for like almost no additional cost, is my guess.
Right. Yeah. All right. So then we got the big news. They showed the PS5 hardware again. Went like weirdly close in on the plastic around the edges. I just had to note because it was like almost like fetishistic. Like, look at this corner in minute detail that the human eye could not even perceive. And I'm like, okay, just tell us the price.
Yeah, I wanted it to be like that Powers of 10 science video where it just zooms into like the molecules of the PS5 or some shit.
Yes. All right. But they announced the PS5 Standard Edition, which is with the 4K Blu-ray drive, will be $499, and the digital-only version without the disc drive, and this was the surprise, is a solid $399, $100 less. It will be out November 12th for most of the world, including North America. It will be out November 19th in most other territories. I think the only unannounced territory right now is China. But if you live in China, you probably are not listening to this podcast. So.
Yes, and like that's because China has all these like requirements that they need to do to test and like make it. You know, there's like legal loopholes to release a console in China that doesn't exist in other places.
Yeah. Let's talk about the price and everything in a second, Sean. And
Okay.
let's just finish with Jim Ryan came out, thanked everyone, and then we got our one more thing moment, which was a teaser-ass teaser for a new God of War. Just some music. We had Kratos saying, "Time grows near. You must prepare yourself." And over a logo, and then it said, "Ragnarok is coming 2021. Good little mic drop moment. We knew they were making it. We didn't know it was coming this soon. And I, again, salivate at the thought of what that team could do with PS5 hardware and no load times. Because...
Yes.
Good God, that's what God of War always wanted to be, I think. No surprises here, but I'm glad it's coming.
Yeah, the one thing I'm disappointed by is that he didn't. I don't think you need all this other time grows near and all this stuff. I just wanted the God of War logo to come up and just hear Kratos go, "Boy," and then say 2021, and then it just fades out, and that's it. That's all I needed. I just wanted to hear Christopher Judge go, "Boy," one more time, and I'm like, okay, we must play another God of War.
Yes, but, I mean, here's my overall reaction, Sean.
Yeah.
Some of the weird clusterfucky things aside, and we'll talk about the pre-orders in a moment, the PlayStation 5 is going to have maybe the best launch lineup PlayStation has ever had. Maybe the PS1, if you go back, was on a similar level, but, like, certainly not the 3 or the 4. I was around for those. I don't really remember the 2, but I don't think any of the famous PS2 games were launch games. But just day one, you've got Spider-Man and you've got Demon's Souls. You've got, this remake that people have been wanting for a decade plus, done better than I think we could have ever imagined. Within that launch window, you're going to have some exciting stuff like the new Ratchet and Clank. They've already showed off a bunch of cool new stuff for next year. We're going to get God of War. We're going to get Horizon 2 Dawn. We're going to get other things like Deathloop. We're going to get, the third-party stuff looks strong. Day one also includes just cool stuff like Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. It's a really, surprisingly solid launch lineup. And then, launch window and year one. They are coming out of the gate much stronger than they did this time last generation. Just undoubtedly. And then it's priced to compete. It is $499 for the one with the disc drive. And I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief that we are getting these at a max of $4.99, because that feels good for like the value of what is in these machines. That's a really good value. And then if you are someone who does not care about physical media, you are getting a phenomenal value, because that digital one for $3.99, that is going for the jugular, in terms of the pricing, and it is very aggressive. And yeah, I am surprised by how excited I am for the PS5 coming out of this show. As someone who has said many times that I just haven't felt the appetite for the next generation, this is the show that finally made me feel like, yes, I want a new console.
Yeah,
and that's what they had to do.
Yeah, that was exactly my feeling on it. That's like, I mean, I assumed that Sony was going to have good first-party stuff, because they've had really good first-party stuff for years at this point, for basically the whole PS4 generation. I mean, obviously they had a lot of good first-party stuff on the PS3 as well, but in particular the PS4, they just kicked it into fucking overdrive. But they just didn't show much, right? They was so sort of... Ratchet and Clank was the only thing they really talked about at the last one they did in like June. And they showed brief teasers of Miles Morales and brief teasers of Demon's Souls. And then now actually getting here and being like, okay, now it's time for them to show the games and like give this information. And it almost like, it's kind of like a weird relief in a way that we get this now when the console is like 2 months away, rather than having been this excited for fucking like... I feel like the excitement might have dissipated. Like, I feel like I'm re-energized for next gen stuff now, because it was really concentrated here. Yeah, I just can't, again, I was at the end of the day, having taught for, because the schedule that with hybrid and how you teach is pretty fucking brutal. Like, it's 80-minute classes back to back, and so it's a lot of teaching, and then I sit down and I'm like, okay, time for me to have lunch, do a little bit of grading, and then this show comes up, and like, again, that Final Fantasy XVI trailer, the Miles Morales trailer, I mean, for me specifically, the Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, because I like that game so much, also hit really hard. And then particularly that Demon's Souls thing, it was just like, I've not been excited about video games like this for the entirety of the COVID-19 quarantine. Like, this whole weird, protracted, not E3 2020 thing we got, where you get like little snippets here and there of some stuff that looks interesting, but generally it's so diffused that it's like, well, it's hard to be excited about anything that anyone's showing, especially then like Ubisoft got into its whole fucking mess. So it's impossible to be excited about anything related to Ubisoft, which knocked out like 1/3 of all the games showed over the course of the entire summer. So then to come into this and just be like, I really want to play Demon's Souls. I really want to play Spider-Man. I want to replay Devil May Cry 5. I'm excited for Deathloop whenever that game will eventually come out. Like, I'm excited about these video games, and the console costs exactly the amount of money I've been expecting it to cost for 8 months at this point. So it is exactly the quantity of money that I have already budgeted, expecting to buy a PS5. And so I have set exactly this amount of money away, and it's like, okay, awesome. Like, I was set to go.
Yep. It's I had not budgeted quite as well, because I'm a poor grad student, but I'm working on it. So, got 2 months to put the money away and everything. Games are going to be a little expensive. I mean, we can talk about that. We do now, after this show, Sean, have solid confirmation. Next-gen games will be $70. Everybody is sort of tiptoeing into it, even Sony, because their launch lineup only has one full $70 game in Demon's Souls. It's kind of funny. Spider-Man is $50. The Sackboy game, which we haven't mentioned, is $60. And then Demon's Souls is $70, but of course there's also a $70 version of Spider-Man. So everyone's kind of trying to like ease their way into it, but that is the brave new world we're in. What do you think?
Like, it is what it is. Obviously I would, as a person who spends money on video games, it would be more convenient for it to be $60.
Yeah.
It is not unreasonable, I think, for the price to move up. Like, for me, what I want the focus to be on related to that stuff is the conversations around unionizing in video games, which I think, like,
sure.
It's easy for people, and like, every time it's come up on Twitter, in games discourse on Twitter with the $70 thing, I think the argument ends up getting, like, really kind of misused in a weird way, of people being like, okay, well, it needs to be $70. Like, you guys keep on talking about labor stuff and like fair compensation and all this. Is like, you need to increase the prices. It's like, well, increasing the prices has nothing to do with that. Like, it's not connected to that at all.
They could have been paying people fairly at $60. They could be doing it at $40. That's not the problem.
Yeah, and changing the price of the games doesn't fix anything with how the labor practices in the video game industry goes. So it's like, whatever, again, I think most video games I buy, I think are worth, the most big AAA video games I buy, I think are worth at least $70. Like, I think that is a fair price for those games. But like, I've been annoyed at the way that like the argument for unionizing games has gotten like on this weird sort of like sidetrack, because on the face of it, the $70 thing seems connected to that, but in substance, it isn't at all. Like, it has absolutely nothing to do with it. And it, like, that should be, I think, ignored mostly from the conversation around that we've been having for years at this point about labor conditions in the video game industry.
You're absolutely right. I do wonder if the higher price tied to the really aggressively priced digital-only consoles we're getting now, I'm curious what like big box retailers like Amazon, Walmart, GameStop, Best Buy will do. Because they will have an incentive to price aggressively so that you're getting your physical games cheaper, right? And there was a period during this last generation where everybody, Amazon, Best Buy, and GameStop, had a 20% off subscription program where you paid a pretty small fee. For Amazon, it was just Prime. For Best Buy, it was $20 over 2 years. I don't know what it was for GameStop, but you got 20% off on new physical games. And I saved a shit ton of money with Best Buy over on that, to the point where I'm like, I have no idea how they're making money on this, other than I guess they're getting my money instead of someone else's, or my money's not going somewhere else. But I wonder if we're going to see something like that. Maybe not as aggressive as it was, but I do wonder if like Best Buy and GameStop and Amazon are going to do something to like figure out a way to consistently sell new games for less than $70 to make you buy disc games. I think that's a real possibility, and that's why I still would recommend people get the version with a disc drive, because you have more power as a consumer that way. You will probably save money in the long run.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, I think, unless you are someone who knows for sure that you're just not going to buy any physical media at all, like no matter what, sure, get the digital edition. But like, I think it's short-sighted to buy the digital version, because this is a thing that you're going to be using for 5 to 8 years, however long the console cycle will run. Like 5 is like the bare minimum, and it's probably going to be more like 8 to 10. If that's the device you're going to be using for that long, like you're going to, with physical games, even if you only buy a used game here or there, or sometimes you get a good deal on a physical game at launch, you are going to make up more than the $100 price difference. You're going to make up more than the $200 price difference on the fucking Series S, honestly, with that in a few years. So, yeah, like I think it is, like, for me, the choice to buy the $500 disc version is pretty clear. I think the digital version is a nice way to, like, get in people's head $400 for a PS5, and then you look at it and you're like, well, actually the disc version is in the long run going to be more worth that value.
Yeah. But I mean, it also works the other way, which is that Sony wants you to buy the digital one, because they will make more money off that digital version in the long run than the physical one, even though it's cheaper to sell now. So yeah, and it's also a 4K Blu-ray player, and if you've never seen a 4K Blu-ray, they are fucking amazing, and I love them, and I am happy for more people to have those in their home, because it is a really cool physical media that I hope continues to get supported.
Yeah, because this will be, because the Xbox One that I have that my dad uses is like from like the 6 months after that console launched. So I do not have a 4K Blu-ray player, so now I will.
Yes, there's a lot of cool ones. We're getting fucking Full Metal Jacket on 4K Blu-ray this week. I am excited. They're doing, Kubrick might have more than any other director other than Spielberg. If you like Kubrick, there's a lot of Kubrick 4K Blu-rays at this point. Anyway, but Sean, I also wanted to mention, November is going to be fucking stupid crazy this year. Let me give you a list of every game I'm aware of, big AAA game that's coming out in November.
Okay.
November 10th, Destiny 2 Beyond Light. November 12th, Demon's Souls. November 12th, Spider-Man Miles Morales. November 12th, the PS5. And all the other stuff. Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, the Sackboy game, whatever else you want. November 13th, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. November 13th, Yakuza Like a Dragon. I had AC Valhalla here at November 17th, but that got moved up. That's November 10th now. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla. November 19th, Cyberpunk 2077. And for all you Switch fans, November 20th, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. What the goddamn fuck, Sean? That is too many games.
Yeah, I don't think the thing you missed in there is that November 10th is the Series X. So that's why Assassin's Creed got moved up. So these two consoles are coming out 2 days apart from each other, which I think is... I don't know if that's ever happened. That seems... Because usually it's a couple of weeks, like at least 1 week apart. So it's like 2 days apart from each other, these two consoles are launching. It's like Xbox is on that Tuesday, then Sony is on a Thursday is when the PS5 comes out, which is a weird day.
Yeah.
But I guess that's whatever. You just put it out whenever you want. But yeah, no, it is packed. I mean, because it's that thing where it didn't seem packed until you put in the Sony launch games. And then all of a sudden you have like a whole suite of launch games that basically just dump right there in the middle of November, on top of all like the normal third-party releases you get.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to be able to play all this stuff. I have, because I'm at least wanting to play Demon's Souls, Spider-Man, Cyberpunk, and Hyrule Warriors. And there's no way I'm going to be able to do all of that at once. Luckily, there's really nothing in December this year, so there's some time. But man, it's going to be a sprint to the finish line for like our top 10 lists.
I mean, I'm so far behind on the games that I wanted to play this year already, just because I haven't had much time to play in the past few weeks. Because it's like, I mean, I still have that copy of Persona 5 Royal over there. I still need to play that. I still need to play Neo 2. I've had that game for several months at this point and have not had the time to just open it up and actually start playing it. So yeah.
We need to, for Persona 5 Royal, we need to just figure out, probably going to have to be next year, a low time when we can make sure we're playing that at the same time and do our podcast segments on it. But yeah, because I'm not going to get to it this year. I just tell you right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of it looks really, really, really fucking good. Like, man, Spider-Man and Demon's Souls on the same day. Like, that's that's a lot for me. Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. I'm already in my head. I'm like, Spider-Man's shorter. Probably knock that one out. Then play Demon's Souls. But who knows? It's a lot of games. So there you go. Let's talk about the pre-order fiasco. So Jim Ryan in the show said, we'll let you know when pre-orders are going on sale. Then there was a tweet where they said pre-orders are going on sale tomorrow, so the day after this show. And then there was also a video between Jeff Keighley and one of the Sony people saying, basically, like this was hilarious, don't worry, we're not going to spring it on you. You'll have plenty of advance warning. All of that turned out to not be true because pre-orders went on sale basically like 2 hours after this show ended. Walmart was the first one to break the seal, and then GameStop, and then Best Buy, and basically by the time the night was over, everybody had gone and put them on sale, and it was a huge confusing clusterfuck, and everyone's sites broke, and it was very difficult to get a console. It's actually kind of funny, Sean. By sheer coincidence, I was running over to run an errand, and I wound up going into a GameStop for something else after this show ended. And I asked the woman at the GameStop about the PS5, and she said, yeah, we're actually really busy today because we're about to put pre-orders on sale. And I'm like, oh, you're doing it tomorrow? And she's like, no, they told us to do it at 6 p.m. tonight. We're really stressed out. And I'm like, they said tomorrow. And she's like, we thought it was tomorrow. So, like, this was like everyone was confused. Stock was also pretty limited. That GameStop I was at said they were only getting 4 of the digital ones and 13 of the physical ones. So very little stock. Very confusing. I can tell my pre-order story because it sucked. But how was yours, Sean?
Like, mine was, I avoided all this bullshit. So basically, I watched the thing up to, like, because it started at like 2 o'clock my time zone, ended at about 3 o'clock, which is when it's time for me to go home. And I was like, well, I got no work done today in this last hour, and I feel fantastic about it. And so then I went home, and on the drive home, or after I got home, I had like a quick snack and was checking Twitter and then like caught up on all so Demon's Souls is a launch game. Cool. It's coming out on PC. Oh no, it's not actually. And like, had a quick rundown from like the 30 to 40 minutes it took me to get home. And then I went to Resetera, which is a video game forum, and just was like, I wonder what people are saying about all this stuff. And they had started a pre-order thread. Just like, here's like a bunch of links for where different like websites and like for when pre-orders go up and the information about it. And I had just this like, it felt like a weird premonition of just like, I should get this ready now. Because I knew that they said it's going to be tomorrow. I'm like, I should just get this ready now. And I was like loading up the pages and making sure that like, because I had accounts on a bunch of those websites. And it's like, is my payment information up to date? because I do definitely after that show, I was like, and knowing that Demon's Souls was a launch game, I was like, I definitely want to get this. And again, I had budgeted out the money specifically for this $500 purchase, and right when that was happening, I saw like everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's up now on Walmart." Because Walmart made a tweet that I'll read out that is fucking hilarious. But then, so I just immediately went to Walmart, saw it, I pre-ordered it, and just was like, well, okay. And that was like, I think at like 4 o'clock or 4:30 my time zone. It was just like, well, I'm done. I'm good. I got it. And then I went and did a bunch of other shit, and probably at like 7 o'clock, I was like, oh, that's what's going on the internet. And then I checked the internet. It's like, oh my God, everything is on fire. Everyone's gone crazy. And then I saw like you were tweeting about trying to get it. And I was like, well, I managed to get one from Walmart. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I had like missed everything that had happened on the internet between me pre-ordering it and like after dinner, basically.
Well, lucky you, because it sucked. Because so Walmart, read us the tweet, Sean.
Yeah, so Walmart tweeted out, so this would have been, it was 5 o'clock basically my time zone. So that makes sense more or less with how, like the timeline of how I did all this shit. Their tweet said, "Make you wait to get the new hashtag PlayStation 5? Nah, that's not like us. Go on, pre-order it now!" Exclamation point. And it's like, they're just like, yeah, fuck it. We're just gonna, because as far as I can tell, basically just what happened was Walmart's like, yeah, fuck it, just pre-order it now. And then everyone else is like, well, Walmart's doing it, we're gonna do it too. And then it's just like domino effect of like different retailers just opening up their pre-orders at different times. Just like, what the fuck? What is that tweet? Like, we'll just do it now.
I mean, where was Sony in all of this? Because like, you can tell retailers not to do that. You can like, if Walmart does that, you can then update everyone else and be like, please don't do this. Like, please, like it was weird. Xbox has had this plan going, we'll see how it goes next week, but they've announced well ahead of time that they're going on sale on September 22nd. They've given the times, they've given the retailers, they planned this all out weeks in advance and let everyone know. And it's just kind of bizarre to me that this broke down so quickly and so holistically, because for me what it was is, I saw the Walmart tweet too. I tried it. Walmart was just completely broken for me. I couldn't do that. Target came and went pretty fast. I was waiting for Best Buy because I have a Best Buy credit card that I can like finance stuff on. But Best Buy, I don't know if anyone got a Best Buy pre-order, because Best Buy's site broke harder than anyone's, because Best Buy's site broke so much that you couldn't buy anything but a PS5. Everything else was fucked up on their site. And basically, like, it was this, I tried for like an hour and a half off and on while doing other stuff of just trying to add the PS5 to your cart, and it would keep crashing. If you got it into your cart, then going from cart to checkout, it would keep crashing. And then eventually I did get to the checkout stage, payment information, everything confirmed, hit the place your order button, and it would crash. Like, it was like that kind of like level of like Lucy pulling the football. And finally I had given up and thought, okay, I'm probably not getting one of these at life. If this is how much of a shit show it's going to be, and there was just no planning, and this is how bad it's going to be, I'm probably not going to be able to get one. This sucks. And then luckily, I was like looking at Twitter when Wario64, I have to thank Wario64 for sending these tweets out, updated that Amazon is live now. And I clicked on it, and I was able to get it immediately through Amazon. Amazon, I will also say, took the time to put in a special, like, they did not just have you buy it through like their normal system. They kind of funneled you, and you hit the link, and then it was like a special page of like, are you sure you want to add this to your cart? And then it funneled to you this separate thing. It was not like using their normal buying payment system. You could use all your normal stuff, but they had clearly like set something up so that their site would not crash. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty easy and frictionless to do it there. But everyone else's was a disaster. And yeah, and then it took Sony like 24 hours to respond to it. It was very weird and bad.
I got mine. I don't know. It seemed fine to me. I mean, it's okay. A weird thing of where, because I did look at the Xbox One, because the Xbox One, my time zone goes up at like 8 in the morning on whatever that day is. Like, it is a school day. I'm like, well, I would, it's like, I'd be fucked. I would, there is absolutely no scenario in which I would be able to get that other than by trying to get someone else to buy it for me and like put my like address in or some shit. Because it's like, there's something about like, it's just like, well, I feel very lucky. I was like exactly the right place at the right time, staring at my computer, getting that shit ready just because I was like, I might as well just get it ready now, right when all that shit went down.
Yeah. So, I think Sony could have obviously handled it better. We'll see. Amazon sent out notices saying not everyone's going to get it on launch day. We'll see what happens with that. It sounds like the supply chain is very kind of confused and constricted, so I'm not sure where things are going to go. But, yeah, that's the state for now. I hope people who want one are able to get it. I've already heard from a couple listeners who were not able to do it. So we'll see. But, yeah. That's the PS5 pre-order fiasco of 2020. It was very weird and kind of funny in retrospect, and I hope I actually get mine. And we'll see, Sean. It's but now we know. Now we know it's coming. We've got our pre-orders in. We know how the rest of the year in gaming is mapped out. I do feel good having that certainty.
Yeah, it's just nice to it just has been this weird long play. That some of it has felt intentional, some of it has felt unintentional. It's just been this weird back and forth. But it does I feel pretty happy. I mean, it is so weird to go from this feeling of are any games launching for any of these consoles to Sony has the best launch lineup they maybe have ever had. Because it's also, it's because it's Demon's Souls, it's Spider-Man Miles Morales, obviously. It's also stuff like that Sackboy game, that Astra's Playroom game that is a preloaded, I don't know how substantive that is, but I'm interested in it because people like that VR game from that same team. There's that Destruction All-Stars game that they had a trailer for at their June thing. It's they've got way more first-party stuff at multiple different levels than they had at the PS4. And it just feels really weird that we're only knowing any of that shit now when the console is out in less than 2 months.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, and we'll see if the country's still standing when this happens, because the scariest thing about all this, Sean, is this is the week after election, and it is very hard for me to imagine the future beyond that date. So yeah.
Here's the weird thing, because I don't know if I've told you any of this. This would be the first time you hear any of this. But so that week you have the election, then that weekend my brother is getting married. He's had a fiance. They've been engaged for a year or something, and the wedding just kept on getting pushed back because of COVID. So they finally set that date for that weekend. So I'll be having to take that Friday and Monday off because they're in Houston, but the wedding's going to be in San Diego, whatever. And I'll have to go down there and come back that Monday. The day after I come back for my brother's wedding is the day that the Xbox Series X will come out. And then 2 days after that is when the PS5 comes out. So it's a lot of life stuff happening, and then a lot of crazy video game stuff happening immediately afterwards. It's a weird, fuck, everything's happening in that one week, 7-day span, basically.
I hope you do not have to travel through any burning cities.
Yes, I think it should hopefully be fine. Maybe.
Yeah, we just got to beat Trump badly enough that everything's okay, right?
Yeah.
All right.
But if the worst comes to worst, at least we'll have Spider-Man to play, That'll be a comfort.
Oh, God. All right. I'm going to end on another call to action. While we've been recording, Sean, the fund I noted at the beginning, Get Mitch or Die Trying, went from $19 million to $20 million raised for Senate candidates. So go, votesafeamerica.com/getmitch. I want people to donate to this because these are Senate candidates who, if you don't think that's a lot of money for Senate candidates, that's a ton. These are a lot of candidates that are working with just a couple million maybe. So we need to win so that we can enjoy Spider-Man in peace.
Amen.